The story of the phoenix is legendary and inspiring to many. A brilliant bird who lived its life full until for whatever reason it could no longer. Hello, I'm Shane Schulz, the founder of the Speaking the Heart radio network. A life that once was full of vibrant color and potential has now become faded and torn. Does this sound familiar to you? After all, what was it that had the phoenix rise from its own ashes to live once more? Well, we believe it was an inner voice that had the heart of the phoenix beat again. That's why each show in our lineup aims to restore purpose and passion to those who need it most. No matter the illness, no matter the pain, the Speaking of the Heart radio network is dedicated to inspire you to live life fully again. From our heart to yours, let's make a difference together. Hello everybody, my name is Shane Schulz. I am the founder of the Speaking the Heart radio network, restoring purpose and passion to those who need it most. Tonight on our live show, we are going to be bringing mental health awareness from a patient's point of view. We are so very lucky to have each and one of our cast members here to be able to give their experiences, strength, and hope in order to explain what mental health is really about from a patient's point of view. So let's get to it. We have Chrissie Hodges. She is the author of Pure OCD. We then have Zee Malvern, is formerly the founder of Revolving Doors. Of course, we have my good friend Wayne the Hacker from Arisen Strength, the motivational podcast. Janine Huff of whereisthesunshine.com. Gabe Howard of GabeHoward.com. And certainly we have our good friend, his name is Jacob Moore from NoStigmas.org. So we are going to talk about mental health awareness from a patient's point of view. Folks, the music that you're going to be hearing this evening is from our good friends Amanda and Austin Harras of Saphyre Rain. They are tremendous advocates in regards to mental health and humanity in general, so their lyrics are going to fit this night perfectly. So as you can see, we have a tremendous panel here with a lot of experience from all different types of levels and different conditions of mental health, bringing mental health awareness from a patient's point of view. So let's get it started. Let's kick it off with you, Chrissie.
Hi, my name is Chrissie Hodges. I'm a mental health advocate. I also I run treatment for OCD consulting. This is where I do referrals and resources for individuals with OCD as well as peer support.
Hi, I'm Zee. I think I'm the only Canadian here from Toronto. I'm 21, so I used to have a nonprofit called Revolving Doors, but then recently events have changed in my life. And I'm just an advocate and a avid sufferer. So I just tell my story and say the truth.
Hi, I'm Janine Hoff, and I'm based out of Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm the founder of an organization, a nonprofit called Where is the Sunshine? And I am a 2016 TEDx speaker. And I advocate for all kinds of mental health, and I'm really big into working with teens. I love working with teenagers and just going into high schools and talking about, mental health, get it to them while they're young. That way when they get out into the world, they have the information and they're ready for it.
My name is Gabe Howard. I live with bipolar and anxiety disorders. You can find me at GabeHoward.com. I'm the host of the Psych Central Show podcast, which is, of course, sponsored by Psych Central. And I write for tons of places all over, and I do a lot of online advocacy and a lot of in-person speaking. And like all of you, I love to really show people that you can live a good life with bipolar disorder, because when I was diagnosed, I didn't know anybody living well with bipolar disorder. So I reached the conclusion that since I didn't know anybody that was living well, there must not be anybody living well, and that was very lonely and depressing. So I decided I was already loud, so I might as well be loud about living well with bipolar disorder, and hopefully the next person that's diagnosed that's laying there thinking, man, am I going to be okay? They'll think, hey, there's this really loud guy on the internet that seems to be doing all right for himself. So that's kind of my goal.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Jacob Moore, and I am the founder of an organization called No Stigmas. And we have a peer support community that has about 55,000 people in it. We have a program called the Ally Program, where we train people to understand the basics of self-care, peer support, and advocacy. And then we team people up in our peer groups and provide peer support both online and in the real world. I lost my father to suicide when I was 6 years old. Grew up with anxiety, depression. I've been diagnosed with everything from seasonal affective disorder to bipolar disorder, and I've taken all the meds for it along the way. But nowadays, I actually maintain my mental health exclusively through diet, exercise, CBT, and peer support.
So as you can see, folks, we have a tremendous panel here of expertise, as well as, unfortunately, circumstances and experience of what mental health is really all about. I personally deal with clinical depression, borderline personality disorder, as well as PTSD. And that has led me into addiction for a very long time in my life as a coping skill. So, I definitely know what it's like to be a patient with mental health. I know what it's like to have to go into the quote unquote system to where, the medical model to be able to help me out as best as it can. But I didn't know that right away. So panel, what I want to do is I want to talk about what it is that did you realize that you had some mental health issues that were going on, and why it is or how it is that you went ahead and addressed it. So why don't you start off, Chrissie?
Oh, okay. Cool. When did I realize that I had mental health issues? Way too late is the short and simple answer. I was living with obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm just going to throw it out there. For anybody that's watching, people typically will think that obsessive compulsive disorder is this quirky, fun disorder, and you wish you had it so your house is clean. But for those of us that actually suffer with it, it is debilitating, and it's tormenting and tortuous. The type of OCD that I have is called pure O, intrusive thoughts. Usually they have to do with sexual and violent intrusive thoughts, blasphemous. I lived for 12 years, starting at age 8, with this type of OCD, having no clue I was mentally ill. None. I actually also had scrupulosity, which is where religion gets involved in your obsessions and your compulsions. And so I believed I was being punished by God, and I had done something wrong every time I had these horrible thoughts. And so I maintained this delusion, for 12 years, because people like me and people like my family, we're not mentally ill. Those people, like, we're not them. And if only I had known, I just think that so much could have been done, and so much heartache and recovery could have come faster. I attempted suicide when I was 20. And that's how I ended up in an inpatient facility. Again, going, I'm not one of these people. But it turns out that I was, and that's when I was diagnosed, luckily, with OCD. And at first I was relieved. I felt the sense of, okay, I didn't do something wrong, and I don't have to feel like the shame. But then I quickly became really angry that 12 years of my life had been given to a disorder and I had no idea what my worldview now is, or my perception, or anything. So that was, when I was 20, it was the awakening for me. And subsequent years later, I worked through all the emotional turmoil that comes with having a mental illness, and getting your symptoms under control, and learning to deal with it from an emotional standpoint and a stigma standpoint. So 20 was the year for me.
Okay, so mine was probably the opposite, and I realized way too young. My teacher realized that I had been self-harming when I was 8, and I had asked about suicide and how to do it, and like what it means and what it is. And then by 12, I was first admitted to the hospital after a suicide attempt. And then from there, it escalated really, really badly. So after about 12, I was hospitalized about 30 times. And then I was put into a long-term institution 4 times. I kept leaving against medical advice. So I'd be like, oh, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I'm cured. It's been 2 days. I'm cured. And really, I was there for about 4 years of my life. So I peaked at 19. I did go through a fiance cancer thing, and it did give me PTSD, which wasn't great. So I did get addicted to many, many things. And definitely alcohol and some medication was my number one. And that's kind of when everything like started and ended, I would say. Like, I started as a young kid being the person that's like, oh, like, I'm so mentally ill. I'm like, I have like cuts all over me. And then I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not really that bad. And then at 19, 18 years old, I was the one running down that hospital aisle, screaming at the top of my lungs with nothing on, and security chasing me, and me having to be put in restraints, call code white, all this kind of stuff. It was completely changed. Like, I found that my anger came out at 19 because I was like, I'm not mad at myself anymore. I'm mad at all you. You people are doing this to me. And then I realized at 21 that, which is my age now, I am about 7 months clean. I'm actually 2 days clean for some medication, which is awesome. Finally got off of that after 8 years. And then, yeah, so it's just, it all kind of happened. And I would say 8 years old, though, I was asking about suicide. I was cutting myself. My teachers like called my parents. My parents were like, we don't know what to do. And yeah, and then I got sent to the hospital, and I kind of lived there for about 10 years. And yeah.
Okay. All right. And now we're at Janine.
I like Chrissie, it was much later in life. I was always the nervous kid, the one who worried about everything. Like, if a friend was doing something, like, oh, but if you go on that roller coaster, you could die. That person. And I didn't realize I had so many phobias, and I was full of anxiety, and it was my whole life. I mean, from a very little kid, I was just nervous nonstop. And then when I was an adult, about 23, 24, I started experiencing panic attacks. And I got over those panic attacks. I found a book at Borders, if anyone remembers Borders books, on panic attacks. And I read it, and the advice in it was really helpful and helped me get over it. And I didn't have anything for a while. And then later on in life, but my anxiety persisted. At about 18 or so, I realized I had some elements of OCD. But again, I was able to cope with it because I didn't know that other people didn't live that way. I just thought, I was a little bit more nervous, a little bit more strict, a little bit more regimented than everybody else I knew. But I just thought that's how people are. I didn't realize until I experienced depression that nope, this is not a normal way to live. And so, I mean, I was already married with children, and I had a house. I was one of those people that people would say, what do you have to be depressed about? You have everything. And I had to explain to the world that, no, it doesn't actually work like that. You can have, quote unquote, everything, but you can still have an illness, just like, anyone could have cancer or diabetes or whatever it is. And so for me, it was like, I would say my late 30s when I was really officially diagnosed and really had to start real work on this.
Okay. All right. And how about you, Gabe?
So when Chrissie said that her family didn't have mental illness, that's exactly how my family was too. I say a lot, my father he's a retired truck driver, so he's not dead. I say he was a truck driver, and people are like, oh, we're sorry for your loss. I'm like, no, he's cool. But he was a retired truck driver. We were blue collar. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I don't say this in any way to disrespect them. This is just how we understood the world. My father is a man's man, and he believed that anything that happened to a man, you resolved by rubbing mud on it. And this whole idea that his son was, depressed or manic, this just really it was seen as bad behavior. So when your son is acting up, you punish him. So I had the symptoms of bipolar disorder. My parents punished me. The symptoms got worse because I wasn't being treated. I was, of course, angry at my family because I didn't know what was going on. And the whole thing just spun around, and they're trying to figure out why they have this terrible child, and I'm trying to figure out why I have these terrible parents. And it just really made for a very difficult transition into adulthood. And it never occurred to me that I could be mentally ill because, see, I wasn't violent. I was intelligent, and all mentally ill people are stupid, and they're violent, of course. And see, I had a job and I had money, and all mentally ill people don't have money or jobs. And I was married, and see, mentally ill people can't be married. And I owned a house, and see, they don't sell property to mentally ill people. And it just sort of built up in my mind like that. As I got sicker and sicker and sicker, I had all these reasons that there was nothing wrong. Eventually my first wife decided that being married to a man with untreated bipolar disorder was not in her life plan. So she kind of skedaddled, and this really made me take stock of my life, and the depression really set in, and a lot of things just converged all at the same time. And I decided, I'm done. I'm ready to end my life. And I just happened to be casually dating, and casually dating is what I say when we're on a family show. A woman that understood mental health. She herself suffered from depression. Her mother was a psychiatric nurse. She had graduated from college, so she had taken like Psychology 101 and learned about it. And she recognized the symptoms of suicidality and depression. And, well, she just thought to herself, this guy isn't right. And she looked me right in the eye one day and she said, "Are you planning on killing yourself?" And I had no reason to lie. I wasn't ashamed of it. And I said yes. And of course, she freaked out, and she's like, "Hey, we have to go to the hospital. We have to go to the emergency room." And I looked at her again, and I said, "Why would we go to a hospital? I'm not sick. Sick people go to hospitals." And we bantered back and forth for a moment. And she said, "I'll tell you what, let's get in the car. We'll drive to the emergency room. We'll ask the intake person if this is where you need to be. We'll explain what's going on, and the intake person will settle the argument. If you're right, I will take you to dinner, and you will get to be right." And apparently, even in my suicidal, depressed, and delusional state, I had the overwhelming desire to win an argument. So we hopped in the car, we went to the emergency room, and we all know the story from here because I'm still sitting here. But the thing that occurs to me time and time again is, one, I was 26 years old, so it's just, I want to say luck that held me in that long. And two, it was absolutely lucky that I crossed paths with this woman. And it was just freak luck. This wasn't a childhood friend. This wasn't my aunt. This wasn't my mother. This wasn't somebody. I mean, literally, I'd known her for a few months. And thankfully she stuck around and cared enough, because I got to tell you, if I was her and she was acting the way I was acting, I'd be like, all right, I met another crazy at a bar. I'm out of here. But she didn't. And I'm here because of it. And that's scary. My life was saved accidentally, and that's why I'm a mental health advocate, because I think people's lives should be saved on purpose.
Yeah, you absolutely won the lottery for sure. Okay, Jacob, your turn.
Well, it's interesting because I just grew up this way. So there wasn't, I don't really remember a time when I was like, oh yeah, I mean, from as early as I can remember, 6 years old, my dad died by suicide. So, I mean, that's just how things were, he lived with alcoholism, and, I know that he had, ADHD and, and certainly depression, anxiety. Of course, none of that was diagnosed for him. And so that was just normal, and so growing up, right after he died, I was really angry and anxious, and I became really paranoid because everybody told me how much I looked like him, how much I sound like him, like I was built like him, my mannerisms were like him, and and my dad was a great guy, to anyone on the outside, but I knew better. I knew that meant that I was going to grow up, I was going to become an alcoholic, and I was going to kill myself when I was 30 years old. And, so I just had this extreme paranoia, and it grew and it developed, into this this legit feeling of being a human experiment. I thought that I was cooked up in a lab somewhere, and that they were doing experiments on me, because it was the only thing that I could think of to explain why I was different from everyone else, why I was having these feelings, these pains in my body, and why I may look normal on the outside, but inside everything was completely different. I knew that I was different from an early age. So when I grew up and finally in high school got the diagnosis of panic disorder and depression, it was just like, okay, well, that's just a name for what I've lived with all of my life,
No, I totally agree, because personally I've dealt with it, since my single digit years. I was dealing with depression at that point in time. I hated my name. I hated my voice. I hated my smile. I hated my looks. Everything that you could possibly imagine about me, I detested, even at that young age. And my first suicidal situation was at 8 years old. I'm not going to say what that was, because I'm not here to be triggering by any means. But my first suicidal attempt was at 11. And so, I was off and running very early, but I was still kind of ignorant for me personally, because I went, just like a lot of people here already talked about, I went for years upon years upon years thinking that I was the problem, and I just needed to figure that out in order to be able to fit in with what it is that goes on in this world, whether it be family, whether it be society, the employment aspect of things. I just did whatever I could to fit in, not realizing that I was behind the eight ball from the very beginning. And, it kept me to that point. One thing that I wanted to bring up is that there's a lot of things that we can talk about, a lot of different topics. And of course, the big topic right now is pre-existing conditions, because everybody's talking about it right now. It's a big thing that's going on. And I don't really care whether anybody's a Democrat, Republican, Martian. I don't really care. What I do care about is how it's going to actually, affect human people. And one thing that I came to realize, is that mental health is often equated to somebody's intelligence. In other words, somebody who has mental health isn't somebody who would be able to handle what goes on in everyday life or in everyday society, based off of their capabilities, not necessarily based off of their illness, but based off of their lack of capabilities. Why don't we talk about that? What do you think about that, Chrissie?
Wow, jumping into politics immediately. We're just going for it. Lack of intelligence with mental illness. Yes, I think that's why, that's one of the many reasons that contribute to stigmas, why people don't speak up about what they've been through. So one of my biggest sticking points, not sticking points, let's start on a positive. One of the reasons why I became an advocate is not only because the type of OCD that I have is not talked about, because it's super shameful, and I could run down like all the common obsessions, but y'all would be like, oh, we don't want to hear that today. It's stigmatizing, it's crazy, but one of the other reasons why I became an advocate is because I didn't understand, like, to get to the point where I felt like I was actually living in recovery, was to be able to get that story out in the open. And I didn't have to hide behind the fact that people who think that people who are, mentally ill are weak or unintelligent, or they need to just go for a run, or they need to do all these other things that, that the media and everybody that doesn't really want to or doesn't feel like they need to understand yet. In particular, I was so lonely just sitting in my own story for so many years. I knew there were other people out there. I knew. And I just thought, where are they? And why aren't they speaking out? Only come to find that they're next door to me, or they're across the street, or they're in my family, and they're everywhere. We are everywhere. But yes, it is the misconception that if you label yourself as someone with a mental illness, you're all of a sudden going to be, people are going to mirror to you what they think mental illness is. And that was scary to me for a lot of years, mainly because of, as I spoke earlier, I had a skewed vision of what that was. I wasn't able to label myself as something like that because, as I always say, anytime someone says mental illness, you know what they think. They always go to Jack Nicholson. They always go to lobotomies. They always go to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That stupid movie has thrown us all under. I mean, seriously. So it's, for me, the reason why I became an advocate is just to say, oh, hey, is just to say, we are not all like that. And you don't have to be like that to be outspoken about it. Now, whether or not in my lifetime I'm going to see what we deal with as a common, Saturday night party topic where everybody's like, let's all share what we go through. I don't know. But what I feel to me is that because I have spoken out, I am able to define in other people's eyes what mental illness is not. And I think for me, that's what the focus is at this point.
Good. How about you, Zee?
So I kind of always thought that, okay, so in Canada, I don't know if you guys have this, but we have a system where it's like, it's 1 to 60. And whatever number you are is how you can act in society. So I was always 0. I was always 0. And I don't know, I guess I would kind of define myself as that, except for the past year, because I couldn't go outside. I couldn't play a soccer game without having a psychotic attack. I couldn't go outside with short sleeves on or even shorts. I couldn't pass anything without thinking of suicide. And I was constantly in the hospital. So I was like, I can't go to school. I can't have a job. I can't live on my own. And I can't do anything. So I basically gave my life to the hospital. And then when I recently got it back, I just realized that, like you said, the mirroring of like what mental illness is. And I had a lot of employers do that because I would be sitting there and I'm like, okay, I have borderline personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. I've been addicted to things and I had bulimia. So that's a lot for like someone to take in. And then they're like, okay, so you had all those struggles and let's say I asked for like 5 days off work. That's a long time for someone who doesn't have a mental illness or physical illness. So they're kind of always like, okay, so you can only handle 1 day of work a week. Let's do that. And it never, ever moves forward. And I was just like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. And then I've been noticing that like people treat me different because of my mental illness rather than treating me just like the way that I deserve to be treated. I really don't agree that mental illness changes the person who they are, but I do agree that the system with the 1 to 60 is honest, and I do think that it is needed because I do need ODSP, which is Ontario Disability Support Program, and I do need the availability for a doctor to come in and say to an employer or to a friend or to a family member, Z is suffering very deeply and he cannot do what you are saying. Because I do have a disability. It's my disability. And I've been pretty paralyzed by it. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not mentally ill, but I am handicapped, I guess you could say. People used to call me handicapped all the time. But yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, I think that capabilities and logic and everything, I can also be extremely manipulative. And it all just comes with the diagnosis. And it's really helpful to know that you can go down the right path. However, there is always going to be mirroring.
Thanks for that. For being so candid, because I can totally identify with a lot of different ways. How about you, Janine? I know that you have a different kind of look at things when it comes to dealing with mental health, but you've been dealing with it for a long while as well.
Yeah, I like to say, a friend of mine, she calls me mental mouth, because I like to say I will shout it from the rooftops, because I want people to know that this is what we look like. I mean, look at us. We don't look like the cast of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We are just your average, ordinary, everyday people. And I believe anyone of any intelligence level, of course, can have a mental illness. And I want people to know that. I want people to know that you can be educated. I have a master's. I went to college. I want people to know that. I want people to know that you can be successful and still have a mental health disorder. And that's part of what I do in my advocacy work, is when I talk to people, I say to them, don't let this inhibit you. If you have something, it's just part of who you are. It's like your arm, your foot. It's just part of you. And you live with it every day, and you can still do whatever you need to do. I look at people like in the Paralympics, and they're doing races and all these different things, and they're missing limbs, and they can still do stuff. And it's the same thing for us. I mean, just because, sometimes we have rough days, we can still do and accomplish anything and everything. I mean, I have, 3 wonderful, adorable children who are all probably screaming downstairs right now. But, we can be parents, we can be spouses and partners and loved ones, and it doesn't matter. A diagnosis is just simply, oh, you have this, but it's just a part of us. It's a part of who we are. It's not who we are. It's just, one little bit about us, just like I have blonde hair and depression. It just goes hand in hand.
Sure.
Hey, sorry, can I interrupt? I have a question. So I agree with you that it's a part of us. However, I feel like the severity of a mental illness is very different. And if someone is depressed, and then if someone's suicidal, that's completely different.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what you think of like when I was 12 to 18, I couldn't go to school. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have a family or friends. I was homeless for a while, and I'm just wondering what you think of that. Like, I literally, because of my mental illness, could not function.
And I like to always tell people that mental illness is a spectrum disorder. Mm-hmm. We're on all different points. Obviously, your experience is much more severe than many others. And it started very young, but you were also lucky enough to be aware of it very young. Mm-hmm. And you did do the treatment, however successful or unsuccessful it was. But yes, I mean, I talk to kids who are suicidal all the time. I talk to adults who have been homeless, who have experienced psychosis, all of that. And yeah, there are different ways, different parts of it. It's not all cookie cutter. But at the same time, I look at what you're doing now, and I think that's commendable. I think that's successful. I think you're intelligent and you're well-spoken, and you can share your story and be articulate and so poised about how you share your story, and you're honest, and that's your truth. And, that's commendable, and that's what I want people to see.
Okay, I totally get that. That's awesome. I was just wondering, just because I've seen people, personal friends and family who have been debilitated, they can't do anything. They've been in hospital their whole lives. They will be institutionalized for the rest of their life, stuff like that. And I know many people like that, actually. And it's kind of I'm you can't function. Function is a huge word for me. I don't know why. But every single time someone's always like, how are you functioning today? And it's what do you mean? What functioning to you? What is normal? So I'm always just kind of like, okay, I wasn't functioning when I didn't go to school, didn't have a family, didn't have a job, didn't have anything. And I'm technically functioning now because I can go day to day without harming myself, harming others, or harming the environment. So I just wanted to put that out there, that there's like different levels of functioning. But I totally agree with you. Like, people of all intelligence levels can have mental illness. You can be Einstein. I'm pretty sure Einstein had anxiety anyway.
Most of the brilliant ones did.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And Beethoven.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. See? Like all the smart ones.
And there definitely is, and I think, Janine, I think you hit it perfectly, is that it's a spectrum situation as to where everybody's an individual basis. It all depends on anybody's individual situation. The treatment is more generalized in different tiers, but, as far as the individual, it certainly can be, an individual situation. Gabe, how about you? I know that you were talking about this not too long ago.
I feel like I have to jump on the political grenade. So the question that was started is pre-existing conditions, and for the viewers and the listeners that are America, we have the Affordable Care Act, and it's the whole big quagmire. So if you don't understand it, pause, Google, come back, and then listen. I'm about to drop some knowledge. When it comes to pre-existing conditions, what they're looking for a pre-existing condition is that you have no insurance, and then you buy insurance. And whatever happened before you bought it is going to be excluded from the insurance that you purchase.
Right.
And on the face of it, that sounds sensible, because what they're thinking is like, okay, so you're going to have no insurance and you're never going to pay in, and then if you get sick, well, then you'll just buy insurance and then make somebody else pay for it. So they claim that that's what they're trying to prevent. So they being the government, politicians, people with money, resources, and health insurance. Here's the problem when we're speaking for mental health. First off, the capitalist in me and the guy that likes money and doesn't want to work for free and wants to eat, I understand that. I mean, things do cost money. We all have to be paid. We're all living in domiciles that cost money, and we're on the internet that costs money. I get it. But when it comes to mental health issues are diagnosed most commonly between the ages of 16 and 24. So when you're diagnosed between the ages of 16 to 24, you're supposed to rely on that employer-sponsored health plan that you've, of course, had from that job that you got at, 13?
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden we're faced with this idea that you're supposed to get health insurance through your employer, but employers are no longer mandated to provide it. And in fact, in America, we have this thing like, okay, so I can hire one person for 40 hours a week. So I'm going to hire Jacob. But see, if I hire Jacob for 40 hours a week, I'm going to have to give him rights. I'm going to have to give him health insurance as mandated by the government. So screw that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire Jacob for 20 hours a week, and I'm going to hire Chrissie for the other 20 hours a week. So now I've got 40 hours of mental health advocacy covered for my company, and neither one of them have to be provided with health insurance.
That's right.
So now they're going to risk it. See, Jacob and Chrissie, they're go-getters. They're like, look, we don't want to be on the government dime. We want to work. We're going to work. We're going to go out and get 2 part-time jobs. See, Jacob, he's a thinker. So he's working 20 hours for me and 20 hours for Shane. So he's got himself a full-time income. No health insurance. But he's young, so he's going to try it. But see, then Jacob hits 30 and he gets cancer. Sorry, buddy, it's a pre-existing condition. So we're going to let him die. Or the people say, no. We're not going to let anybody die. That's not the way we're going to handle this. We're not bad people. He's going to go to the hospital, and we're going to take care of him anyway. Well, if we're going to let him go to the hospital and take care of him anyway, then aren't we already paying it? So why do we need this pre-existing condition clause? So I think you might be lying, Mr. Politician. And then this whole muckety stuff happens in between that's way above my head. But here's what I can't get over. People are sick, and sick people that get care get better. And people who are well live better lives, have jobs, pay their own way, and aren't the drain on society that we're all worried about. So it seems to me, from a purely business standpoint, meaning I don't care about you at all, I just care about your ability to pay taxes, we should get you better. Mm-hmm. Now listen, I do in fact care about people, and I think a good enough reason to make somebody healthy is because they're a human and they have a right to be well. And I haven't figured out how this is a controversial topic or a political thing to save my life, but it is. But I got to tell you, it makes sense to pay for them from a business aspect, and it makes sense to pay for people from a we care about people aspect. So the only thing that I can think of is that we're just mean. We just feel that sick people are entitled, and we want to punish them and knock them down a peg. Take that, cancer patients. And that's just stupid. So now I had to say all of that, and Donald Trump's coming to my house right now. I can feel it. He's twittering at 3 a.m. about at Gabe Howard 29, and I know it's already happening. And
the FCC is on my phone right now.
Oh
actually.
man, my wife just got arrested. They took the dog. You're my family now. But this is, of course, the problem with pre-existing conditions. People are sick, and we've got this idea that the only people that are going to be pulled into this are people that refuse to buy health insurance. I don't know who these magical people are that are just running around saying, screw it, if I get sick, I want other people to pay for me. I walk around the neighborhood all the time, and I don't see all these angry, entitled people. I just see people. And there's so many ways that businesses and are able to get around these government regulations, like I said with hiring Jacob and Chrissie, that it just doesn't make sense. And health insurance is incredibly expensive. And it's incredibly expensive, especially if you have a pre-existing condition. And in the case of Zee, he was diagnosed as a child.
Right.
He was a kid. So now he hits 18, he gets off of his parents' insurance, and he can't buy it because of an illness that he had at 15.
Yep.
You bastard.
Lucky for Zee, he's in Canada.
Right. Zee is the smartest one because he lives in Canada. But so that's the pre-existing condition issue, and especially to tie that all back to mental health, which is what we're mostly talking about. The diagnosis rate is very young. Again, 16 to 24, and a lot of 16 to 24-year-olds just have not established these long-term, high-paying careers that come with the good health insurance that our parents are used to, and that I at 40 am used to. I'm going to be okay because all this stuff got, this stuff was talked about. I'm not a kid anymore, I guess, but I'm just an illness and an insurance payment away from being uncoverable for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And that scares me.
Yep. How about you, Jacob?
Well, I mean, I agree 100% with everything that you're saying, Gabe. I couldn't add more to that, so I think what I might be able to add is the perspective of, okay, so the system's broken and I don't see it being fixed anytime soon. So what can we do? And, that's why I really like to focus on preventative care. And I love to focus on the idea of choose your own adventure. You get to decide how you approach your mental health treatment. Personally, I made sure that there was no formal diagnosis on my record because I suspected that someday it would come back to bite me in the ass. That's something that, it was a personal choice that I made, and I chose to go outside of the system to seek treatment for myself. So that means now, because even though I'm an employee of my own organization, we can't afford to pay me insurance. And that's just the reality of being, a small nonprofit organization. So what am I forced to do? Well, I have catastrophic insurance. So if I get cancer, or if I'm hit by a car or something like that, I'm not going to go bankrupt, which is great. But my deductible is so high that I never use the insurance. That's just, the way it is. It's a just in case policy. So what I do for my mental health treatment is I use online counseling because it's what I can afford. And so I found a fantastic counselor at betterhelp.com, and I pay their weekly rate, and I'm able to see a counselor. We have video chats just like this every week. And that's how I approach therapy. Again, that's what works for me, but that's my way around the system. And that's what we're really encouraging people, at No Stigmas and through our ally training is, let's think creatively about this. If the system's broken and the doctors, see you as a number in a file, or they want to write a script and give it to you and say, here, try this, and perform some actual human experiments on you, then what can we do to take ownership of that? And what can we figure out creatively to support ourselves and support each other?
I'd like to add something to that, Jacob, because, we talk so much about early intervention for mental health. And that's something that's so, so important. I think that if we get to people early and start treatment, then they don't end up spiraling. I mean, like Zee said, it depends where you are on the spectrum of your illness. But at the same time, if you get to people early and you start, treatment early enough, then they don't spiral, then they don't end up suicidal, then it actually helps them. And it's so critical. And we're not in a society that focuses on preventative mental health care. We only focus more on crisis. That's really a dangerous place to be.
No, I agree with you, Janine, and I agree with Jacob. I agree with everybody that's talked. This is a great conversation.
What are you to
As far as I know, my mic wasn't working altogether well in the beginning. So let me just say that, I have dealt with mental health since I was in my single digit years. I've been suicidal since that time. Dealing with suicidality, the challenge of it. I dealt with a lot of things in regards to people equating my intelligence versus my mental health. That's something that I definitely want to squash. I want to take that stigma out of things. That's a purpose of mine, in the years to come. One of the things that that we're talked about often, in the things that we do is peer support. And I know that everybody, on this panel is very big on peer support and the need for it. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that and how it is that we would, want to advocate for that or that going more and more. How about you, Chrissie?
So peer support for me, this is what I do for a living, and particularly for people with OCD, although I've worked in the system here at the state institution. So I've worked with every single disorder that anybody that came through the institution had, which I loved. I loved working in that environment. A lot of people don't, but for some reason I just could relate after being, in an inpatient lockdown facility and understanding that the bright light is someone that can provide hope. So peer support for me was probably one of the reasons why I'm here today. I actually just wrote a blog, but talk a lot about how I feel like there were two different types of recovery. There was medical recovery, and then there was emotional recovery. The first recovery was obviously getting my symptoms under control, getting the right therapy, whether that was combined with medication, but seeking out professionals that understand OCD and that can understand how to teach me how to manage my symptoms so I could live a day-to-day life instead of being controlled by my illness. The emotional recovery was 13 years later. So after getting successful and effective treatment, I spent years of misery and stigma and just battling depression about trying to understand and trust my brain again and be able to think, okay, I'm waking up today and I see this happening and these are all my senses, but is this how I'm actually interpreting the world? When you have a mental illness, you are perceiving what's going on based on what your brain is telling you. And if you feel like you can't trust your brain, there's a learning curve there where you go, I don't know whether or not I really am going to murder my pet today, or if that's just an OCD thought. Just so you know, I'm not going to murder my pet, but that is the type of OCD that I have, where I do have these really horrible intrusive thoughts and they scare me. And it took a long time to come to terms with, first of all, how in the world, again, am I an intelligent person and I cannot distinguish between these stupid fears and thoughts? But also, what did I do to deserve this? And how am I going to forgive myself for being that kind of person or for feeling these things? And do I deserve a good life? And am I worthy of a good life? And it wasn't until I met peers 13 years later, the people that understood that, hey, you can be pissed off for as long as you want to be pissed off. Like, it's okay. Because I grew up in the South, so you're always like, what do the neighbors think and all that? And the neighbors were not thinking highly of me when I came out of inpatient. But so it was seriously, it's always, this, you want to always portray this face of calm and success or whatever, but y'all, I was pissed. I was mad. Like, why did this happen to me? And why was I so stupid? I didn't know that this was going on. And why am I not smart enough to control it? And I stayed there in that ugly place. And then when I met people that had my type of illness and just mental illness in general across the world, I started a podcast when I first started advocacy. And when I started hearing that there was this underlying thread of anger and sadness and unworthiness and I don't deserve and this was not like a woe is me. This was a, oh my God, thank goodness I'm not alone. And I'm okay that I felt like this for so long. And that's what peers do. You know, they're not the people that are like, you know, that are out there going, yeah, your life sucks and you're never going to be able to do it. They're out there going, oh my God, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there and it does suck. But let me walk with you. Let me be with you tomorrow morning. I'm going to call you immediately. I'm going to show you that it can get better and things can get better. So peer support to me was the absolute reason why I am in the place where I am and the advocate that I am today, which is why I do it on my own. I try to give back to people and meet them where they're at and just, you know, it's like the 4-minute mile, you know, when nobody thought they could run the 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden, like someone broke the barrier and then everybody's like, I can do it too. You know, that's what peer support is.
Yes, it is.
I did it. How come you can't do it?
Totally agree.
Jacob is the only one here that can run a 4-minute mile. Can you run a 4-minute mile?
Oh man.
You have the best odds, buddy.
I can sprint really fast for about 100 meters, and then after that, I'm about spent. So.
Yeah, you and I both.
I can't sprint at all, like no meters.
Zee, this is something that a lot of people talk about when it comes to, especially when it comes to challenges and struggles that we go through, and that is fair and unfair. And that's something that we need to talk about when it comes to peer support, don't we?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, like, in my experience, it's kind of funny with the whole peer support thing. I, my whole life, have been surrounded by other people with mental illnesses. Who watches Orange is the New Black? Yeah? All right. So let's say that a mental institution or a mental hospital is jail, and then the SHU, which is basically a hole that you just go and you sit in and you do nothing, you get nothing, you have nothing, you can't talk to anybody. That is PICU in Canada. That is the unit that you go in, you're not allowed to talk to anybody. You can't talk to the other patients because there's only 8 others. You can't talk to them. And you can't talk to any doctor that is not assigned to you. And you can only request to use the phone. You have security 24 hours a day, security cameras in halls, bathrooms, and in your room. And you live in a kind of like a bubble. You have like the windows. And this is famous for borderline personality disorders. We all get put in PICU because we aren't really sick. We're just faking it. And if we get put in PICU, we're going to pretend that we're better because, hey, it's shit here. Like, it sucks. But PICU is where I met my 2 best friends. And it was a place where, actually, my 2 best friends and my 2 people who inspired me to start advocating. And I met them, and I still know them today, and they're amazing. One is like 47. I'm 21 years old. It's the randomest, lovely relationship. And he was in PICU, and we kind of, as patients, come together. So there's also isolation where the girl that I knew could not talk. Like, she just wasn't allowed to talk. So we found ways to talk to her so she could really be with like a community. And like, I don't know if any of you have been in mental health, like hospitals, like emergency rooms or anything, but you become a community once you're with the people that you're in the unit with. I mean, your roommates, you start to love them, and your friends. Some people don't love their doctors. I mean, I personally did, but I know a lot of people who haven't. You always get that one nurse that you're like, no, this person sucks. I hate this. Or like that one person that taps on the window constantly, and you're like, shut up, go away. Like, you just can't handle it. So it's really a community once you're like, if you're severely struggling, you're not alone, because you're going to go into PICU. They're going to tell you to shut up, and no one will.
Okay. I understand that in a lot of ways. How about you, Janine?
So I think the role of peer is absolutely critical. And it's why I founded my organization, was because when I was so sick, I felt like I was thrown to the wolves. It's like, okay, here, come see me back in 2 weeks and here's a prescription. And I was like, but what do I do now? Where are the people who are like me? And I couldn't find anything, and the resources were scattered all over everywhere. There were no places for us, and anything that I'd found online was not really functioning. It was like, oh, we used to exist, but we no longer exist. And I said, I need to find something, and if I can't find it, I have to create it. And so I created it, and slowly but surely I found peers throughout the city. And what I decided to do is to really connect us all together. And my goal is to connect us with the professionals, with the hospitals, with the doctors, with all the mental health organizations, because we're all one team. It shouldn't be the professionals versus the amateurs. And that's kind of what I feel that it's like, at least here in Florida, where it's 50th in mental health funding per capita. It's really, the resources are, spent. I mean, it's hard to find a doctor because there just simply aren't enough. You call and they said, I can see you in 3 months, or I'm not taking new patients, or 6 weeks. And it's like, but I can't wait 6 weeks to see you. I'm struggling today. And so peer support became my lifeline, and it became so important for me. It was the first time that I could be around people that I didn't have to look my best, or I didn't have to feel my best. And I had, I could say to them, today just sucks and I'm not having a good day. And they're like, okay, that's cool, and we'd sit there and have coffee and, just talk. And if I just felt like zoning out and not listening, they were cool with it. And it's not like, why aren't you paying attention to me? And I was like, these are people who are like me. And they were, interestingly enough, they were all very artistic and creative. And I come from a music background. So for me, it was like almost a natural progression to find these people. Like, we all gravitated toward each other because we shared common interests, in addition to having a shared illness.
That's something that we're definitely seeing a common theme, right? Is the fact that in my history, I know I've seen some extraordinary people when it comes to dealing with mental health issues, mental health challenges, whether it be the arts, whether it be intelligence, whether it be business, whatever the case may be. I mean, these are the people that are the peer support, right? I mean, these are the people that we really, are around. It's not like we're around people who don't know what the heck they're talking about, don't know what they're doing, aren't capable of doing this, aren't capable of doing that. I mean, they're much more capable than not, aren't they?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I agree. And I find the artistic side so fascinating. And I always talk about celebrities like Demi Lovato and Adele and Beyonce, but also, like I mentioned before, Van Gogh and Beethoven.
Yep.
I mean, all these artistic people also suffer. And intelligent people like Winston Churchill and Abraham Lincoln. These are people who are revered in history, and they live with a mental illness. So it's important. It's important to share these stories. And I think the connection between intelligence and the arts is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hop on. I know you just said, what was the line? I need help now. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is something that if you ever, if anyone who knows me, you'll know that when waiting lists and mental health come together, I am extremely passionate and I will rip your head off. Because in Canada, there's no such thing as mental health treatment right away. You have to recover before you get proper treatment. So as an example, I was going to a private institution and I was refused admittance for a year because I cut myself. Now, I was going in to be treated for psychotic events and for being having borderline personality disorder, which as many of you know, is mood changes, impulsivity, everything like that. And I wasn't allowed to be impulsive. I wasn't allowed to have psychotic attacks. I wasn't allowed to drink. I wasn't allowed to take meds that weren't prescribed. I wasn't allowed any of this. And I was like, this is bull. Like, I am sick right now and I need help. And they were like, no. You don't need help right now. You need help when you're better. So we can say 98% of our community recovers. And that's why everybody will pay the money to go there. And it's like, it's just in Canada, it just drives me crazy. I'm like, oh my God, like this is ridiculous. Same with eating disorders. I was at TGH. If you're under an 18.5 BMI, you will not be accepted into inpatient. But it's not because you're sick. It's because 18.5 is considered underweight. And then if you're under it, which most people are when they have a eating disorder, you're not allowed in because you need to gain that weight. And if you're above overweight, you're not allowed inpatient. You can't come because you're not really serious. We can moderate you like easily at home when really overeating is just such a huge problem. But I had to hop on that just because I was like, Canada, I just can't handle you sometimes. But I mean, like, you guys are in the States, so.
That's a tough one to follow, isn't it, Gabe?
I have so much to say on peer support as Jacob knows, but the rest of you don't. I'm in charge of the peer certification in the entire state of Ohio. So if you are a certified recovery supporter or a mental health or addiction peer supporter in the state of Ohio, me or a member of my team have touched your packet. So don't like shorten that quote. Gabe has touched your packet.
That's a drop.
Yeah.
Just put some mud on it.
Just put some mud on it. But I spend a lot of time talking about peer support, and I'm sitting here like thinking of my answer, and there's so many directions to go. Like, I spend some of my day convincing people that peer support is not the inmates running the asylum. It's not stupid. It's well respected, and it serves a real need. And then I spend another part of my day, in fairness, convincing people that no, if you become a certified peer recovery supporter, you are not a therapist, and everything in between. So, I'm not 100% sure like which of my 8,000 stories in my head to tell. So I'm just going to tell this one that I think explains what peer support is. And I'm going to butcher it because I didn't rehearse it, but it goes something like this. There was a guy in a hole, and he was at the bottom of the hole, and he was yelling up, "Help me, help me." And a minister walked by, and the minister looked down the hole and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm trapped in a hole." And the minister said, "Okay, I'll pray for you." And the minister walked along, the guy was still in the hole. A few hours later, a doctor walks along and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And the guy says, "I'm trapped in the hole." And the doctor said, "Well, I'm going to go research some medical treatments for being stuck in a hole, and I'll get back with you." And the doctor left, and the guy was still stuck in a hole. And a teacher came by and, yelled up, "Hey, I'm stuck in a hole." A teacher yelled down, "Oh, let me teach you how holes work," and got the entire history of a hole. And the teacher walked on, and of course the dude is still stuck in a hole. Eventually, a peer supporter walked by, and the guy said, "Hey, I'm stuck in a hole." And the peer supporter jumped in the hole. And the guy said, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You're now stuck in a hole too." And the peer supporter said, "It's okay, I know the way out." And that's really what peer supporters are. We're not doctors, we're not therapists, we're not online communities, we're not even the person that's trying to do anything. We're just somebody that's been there and done that and has wisdom to share, and we can keep company. And we don't say stupid things like, "Oh, you're sad? Did you take your meds?" We say, "Oh, you're sad. I get it. I too have been sad." And everything in between. And that's the vital piece that's missing. The last thing that I want to say, because I can't control myself, is peer support is a well-recognized thing in every industry. I am sure that I'm going to pick on Jacob because he said earlier that he owns a small nonprofit, therefore he is a small business owner, and I'm sure at some point he has gone to a small business seminar and sat in a room with other small business owners taught by a business person. That's peer support. Anybody that's gone to Weight Watchers or Taking Off Pounds Sensibly has sat in a room with other people trying to lose weight, led by a person who has lost weight, and on and on and on and on. But yet for
Personal
some
development in itself.
reason- yeah. But for some reason, when we say, hey, we need peer supporters in mental health, people are like, I don't know, this is interesting. I really feel like it all goes back to the stigma of, if you have mental illness, you have nothing to offer anybody, so sit down and shut up. And that's just ridiculous. Peer supporters have a vital role to play. And I'm glad that we're playing it, at least in the state of Ohio. I can't speak for all states because as big as I am not everywhere. But that's the value of peer support. It makes so much sense to me, and it's used in literally every other industry. So we're just late to the game. If anything, this is proof that we've been slacking, not proof that we're doing something ridiculous. We should have done this 50 years ago. And in fact, we probably did. We just, didn't have grant money then, so nobody knew about it.
Okay. How about you, Jacob?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that, peer support is something I believe in wholly. I mean, that is one of the founding principles of No Stigmas as an organization and of our ally program. So maybe I'll speak to the other aspect of it that you alluded to, Gabe, which is, the monkeys running the zoo or something along those lines. And I think there's a necessary caution with peer support that is important to have. And that's, we run the risk of, people trying to step into that counseling role. We run the risk of people not being prepared or not knowing how to, carry out peer support in a positive way. And you also can run the risk of that. We mentioned before the echo chamber of, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Oh yeah, I feel like that too. And I feel like that. And let's all sit in this room and wallow together and sit down in the bottom of that hole and hang out in the dark together instead of climbing out together. Right. So that's a real risk. And, so that's why I think some people are naturally, organically, good at providing peer support and have those skills kind of innately. And some people need to learn those skills. And so that's why, I love to hear about the programs where there's training involved, like yours, Gabe, and Chrissie's. And that's, what we do at No Stigmas as well. We have a 3-hour online training program that teaches people first, the basics of self-care. And it's so important to start there with self-care before you move on to peer support, so that you're in a place where you can provide support to someone, so that you know how to properly create boundaries and manage expectations, so that you're not giving so much that your own mental health is being affected negatively. And, like we say, you can't drink from an empty well. You can't supply water to someone else from an empty well. And so, you have to learn those basics before you enter into a peer support relationship, to make sure that you're in a good place, that you're able to do it, and to make sure that the situation is positive and is healthy before you enter into a potentially, dangerous or damaging situation. But what I will say about peer support is this: trained or otherwise, the number one best thing that anyone can do as a peer supporter across the board, and you will never ever go wrong if you do this one thing: just listen. If you shut your mouth and you open your ears and you listen, you can help someone more than you realize, more than you can possibly know. Because the majority of the time, someone already knows the answer to their own issues. They already know their problems. They know it better than anyone else. And just giving them a sounding board, giving them the opportunity to talk it out loud with someone else, allows them to see it clearly and allows them to understand, okay, I can take that next step. And it normalizes what they're going through. And it allows them to say, okay, there's someone that gets that, and together I can move forward.
So I'm going to jump on your bandwagon, Jacob, but I'm also going to take a little bit of another turn to see what y'all think, and feel free to disagree with me if you want. But oh my God, the listening piece. Oh my God. And I had to learn to listen, and I thought I was a good listener, and damn, I was not. But my whole thing is this, going off of what Gabe was saying right now with, the peers coming up in the mental health, and now all these states are starting to be credentialed. Colorado just joined the party. Yay, Colorado, last month. You're about, 20 years late, but whatever. So now that these states are really starting to credential people, I think that I see something that really bothers me a little bit, and I would love to hear y'all's take on this. I have been trained as a peer supporter. I have worked in the industry. I've worked in the field. And I also know that until I was trained, I didn't know what the F I was doing. Like, I can meet somebody where they're at, but then I'd be like, oh, let me tell you about my Prozac and what it did for me and everything else. When all of a sudden, like, you're going to spiral someone over here who's desperate and like looking for anything to feel better. And so I do see this trend as well of, I'm a peer support because I have a mental illness. And I also think that there is a place for people who have been trained and moving forward in this career path to be like, you have got to get the credential, or you've got to get some sort of formal training. Otherwise, well, number one, it's going to give peers a bad name. If any random person just busts up in there and they're all like, I'm a peer supporter, and, by the way, like, go drink a fifth of whiskey and you'll feel better, because that's what it did for me. I don't know. But the other thing is, it is dangerous, because yes, Gabe, I agree. Like, we are all like, people will be like, well, y'all aren't therapists and you're not, you don't have a master's degree. And by the way, you're mentally ill, so get the hell out of here. But, while we do play an integral part, we also have to understand those boundaries that Jacob was talking about, like the boundaries of being able to work with people, also the boundaries in the field. Like, you cannot step on counselors' toes. You cannot step, or yes, if you're doing shared decision making and you feel like that person is like, I don't want to do this med because X, Y, and Z, you don't want to bust up in there and be like, go in there and call them an asshole. Like, you really want to like help them understand, like, let's figure out together, like, I can support you and talking. So I don't know, like that, like peer support, I'm down. I love it. This is what I do. But I also have the opinion of like, I don't really appreciate it when everybody says they're a peer support. Yeah, it needs to stop. Help.
So, it's the first thing I want to say is I spend a solid 50% of my day telling people to stop doing stuff. Like, that's I'm the stop that guy, and I get a lot of pushback from it all the time. They're like, well, you're not empowering me, and I'm like, you're right. I am not empowering you to bring the rest of us down. That's I do it more professionally and nicer, but I give this whole presentation about how being a certified peer recovery supporter, and again, I am talking about the state of Ohio, but I feel that it does apply, but we're a brand. So, and I give the example of, if you go to McDonald's and you have bad experience at McDonald's, you don't tell all of your friends that the McDonald's on Main Street, the one between Hamilton and Morris, is the one that gave me bad service. You just say, I got bad service at McDonald's. So you're knocking them all down. But you're right. If we want to rise up, there's an expectation of just certain things that you have to do. And that's why Jacob and I just met recently. I've been aware of him for a while because of an unfortunate WeGo Health incident. But the he beat me in a contest. It wasn't all that unfortunate.
Okay.
But when he
Thanks for clarifying that one.
Yeah. When he first talked to me about it, he's like, oh, we're going to let a bunch of people become peer supporters. And I did have that, like, oh yeah, that's great. Because I'm a pessimist by nature, but then he explained how it worked. There's this webinar, we're going to teach people what they can and can't do. And this is like, I don't mean that this is going to sound bad, but I don't have a better word, but it's like peer support light. It's people getting their feet wet to learning about it, but they still have the support of the Ally program. They still have an organization backing them. And if they make a mistake, somebody's not going to say, oh, you suck and you're out forever. They're going to say, again, another form of peer support, hey, maybe you didn't handle this the best way. Why don't you try this next time? And that's why these support structures need to be in place. Because we can't run amok. I mean, that's, and I'm sure Jacob can talk a lot to this because if I remember correctly, it took you 2 years to put this together, right?
Yeah, well, and 2 years, but this is also the evolution of our original peer support program. And, I got to tell you, without monopolizing too much, a good buddy of mine, Johnny Immerman, started an organization in Chicago called Immerman Angels, and they provide peer support, one-on-one peer support for cancer. And it's a beautiful, amazing organization. And they team up someone who's beaten a particular type of cancer with someone who's currently fighting that same type of cancer. And it's a beautiful model. I love it. And I was talking with Johnny about what we do, what my hope for No Stigmas was. And he said, well, here's our model, here's our handbook, change cancer to suicide, cancer to mental illness, and go start your peer support program. And that's what we did. And it was a very big learning experience because it did not work. We teamed up people based on that. And we did have training. It wasn't that we just let them go, but it wasn't enough. And here's why. Here's the trouble with mental health, with mental illness. It's not like most times with cancer. Like if you beat cancer, you beat cancer, and it generally doesn't come back. With mental illness, it's a lifelong experience. It's a lifelong journey, right? And so you can't have a mentor who lives with depression and team them up with someone who's also dealing with depression. And then your mentor has depression and can't support the mentee. And suddenly your mentor needs support and your mentee is left without support. And it's unsustainable. And so that's the trouble with that system, which is why we leveled the playing field when we said everyone is an ally. Everyone gets the same training. They all learn the basics of self-care and peer support and advocacy. And you get to enter in knowing the rules where you currently are in life. And we meet in groups. And we do that both online and in person so that you have backup. So that with 3 or more, that someone always has your back. And that's not to say that peer-to-peer, one-on-one relationships can't work and aren't successful. I'm not saying that. But that's just our model, and that's what we do to make sure that everyone is healthy and everyone is on the same page. And we go one step further, and we encourage people to meet up if they're doing so in person, like I said, in groups of 3 or more, but we're also not getting together traditional peer support, church basement, hi, my name is. We're getting together for activity-based interactions. And we're allowing people the opportunity to not just sit around and talk about their problems. Let's get together. Let's do something. Let's go get a coffee. Let's go for a walk. Let's have a reading group. Let's go for a bite to eat. And let's just be normal human beings who all know that we have issues and we can talk about those issues if we want to, but let's let them come up organically. And let's just be like, okay to just hang out and talk and not have to talk about our freaking brain disease for a hot minute, So anyway.
That's a great
go on that tangent.
No, that's a great segue.
I think
actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I feel the need to say I think the world of Jacob's model, and as somebody that runs for the state of Ohio, I see models all over the place. I mean, there's just peer support is not a new concept. There's I don't know, a couple of thousand models, and most of them are okay. Some of them are just downright scary, and I think that No Stigmas is one of the better ones. And I'm not I mean, you are here, so I suppose you can say that I'm kissing your ass, but I mean that sincerely. I wouldn't have had you on the show if I didn't, but it's true. It's because you paid attention to detail, and paying attention to detail is professionalizing something, and things that are deemed well thought out and well orchestrated and well executed will always get more respect than, hey, we all love each other and we gather in a park. And like you always say, or like you just said, Jacob, we're not insulting the people that gather at a park, but it's not a sustainable model. Eventually people will stop showing up at the park.
Absolutely. And I learned that from personal experience because, I entered into some unsustainable peer support relationships, and I, went that route and both on both sides of it. And I had people who gave me horrible advice. And I was like, no, that just doesn't work. And then likewise, I've been in, situations where I have given and given and given so much that my own health started to decline because I stopped taking care of myself because I was so worried. I was obsessed with how this other person was doing, and are they going to kill themselves, or are they, going, it was just like, so yeah, you have to have that. And it's, so important, I think, across the board with any type of peer support relationship, and I think that goes for, recovery or treatment in general is, that idea of being able to step out for a hot minute and just say, okay, does this make sense? Is this logical, or am I just like following along?
Or is it being presented as from the ideal situation? Right. Because like for like one thing that I keep on running into with like being a life coach or a life improvement coach, people thinking that, you can handle any type of situation whatsoever. And the thing is that, a lot of people look at things from an ideal situation, like what you were talking about with the model when it came to cancer. It made sense. This person had this type of cancer, so let's get a person who actually beat that type, and therefore that makes sense, right? And it would make sense in this realm of things as well, but it doesn't work out that way. And a lot of things that it's a great segue as to where all of us here on this panel, we deal with our challenges. We manage our challenges, right? It's not that we don't have challenges anymore. It's not that we don't deal with the type of things that we've gone through for many years. It's just that we manage it, and then we have our days as to where it works, and we have our days as to where it's more challenging than other days. Don't we? You agree with that, Chrissie?
Okay, well, so can I segue into a topic?
Sure. Okay,
so your question makes me think about this. It makes me think about something that I've been thinking a lot lately, especially as an advocate, and I think that we had a little bit of a discussion yesterday when we did that. We were testing all of this stuff.
Yeah. A lot of good that did. But go ahead.
Obviously, I didn't learn anything. But people who come out as advocates for mental health, mental illness, all of a sudden there becomes, what did I call it yesterday? I called it the, advocacy guilt. That's what it was. Right. Where when you are an advocate, like when I came out as an advocate, it wasn't like in my mind, I was like, yay, I'm all cured and everything's good. And now I can speak about it for the rest of my life. I mean, OCD is a chronic disorder if not treated, and there is no cure. And so when I came out as an advocate, and I would have bad times, or I would still have intrusive thoughts, or I would still have days of compulsions, I would think, and I'm not trying to take, Janine, I think this is what you said yesterday, I'm not trying to take your words out of your mouth, but like, I'm a phony, like I'm fake. I'm like, how could I be preaching to people about recovery when I suck? Or like, what if people knew what I went through? And I just think, okay, wait, I actually do have a point. Like, sorry, my brain's going 100 miles an hour, but listen to this. This is what I have to say. What I have to say is this. I cannot stand it when people put people's like tragic mental illness stories and then, oh my God, but look at where they are now. And look, Chrissy does this, and oh yay, look at her, and like she can do her hair, and she can get out of the house, or whatever. Because here's the thing, like we are ongoing with our recovery. We're ongoing with being able to manage this. And so what happens is I think that people see, and I was talking about this yesterday, is people look at mental illness because of the misconception they have about it or what they think mental illness looks like. And when they find out that you have a mental illness, they're like, oh, good for you. You make your own money. Oh. And you're just like, what? And so, like, it turns into this, like, we're trying to be out there telling people, look, we have normal lives. And by the way, like, your family members have a mental illness, they're just scared to tell you.
Yes.
Because you're judgmental.
You know what? I got to jump in real quick because I've been struggling a lot with this idea of success recently, right? Because I feel like, man, I don't have the financial success, the financial stability that I want. And as an advocate, I feel like, gosh, there's so much more that I want to do, or there's other people that are doing it better. There's people like Gabe Howard that has a podcast on Site Central. And, I gave you a little jealousy back, Gabe. But here's the thing. What is the definition of success? And Zee was talking about this earlier with, functioning, getting out of bed in the morning for some people and brushing your teeth
is success.
Is a success. Absolutely.
Yep.
And living with mental illness, we are as a community, 1 in 5 of us in the United States, and we are the most successful people, I dare say, in the world.
Well, and resilient.
And the resiliency, yes, and we have to be resourceful and we have to think outside of the box. We live in a world that was not created for us. We have to function in this world, this 9 to 5, go to college, get a job and a mortgage and all of that stuff in a world that like was not made for us. And like, that is success,
It goes back to the spectrum. Everybody is at their individual place, their individual spot on that spectrum. There are some people who, listen, I don't take a shower every single day because I get lost in some days because I'll sit there and I'll be working and everything like that. I'm tired. I'm exhausted from the things that I do. And then I go and, but obviously it's not because I don't want to. It's just the fact that I just get lost into it, you know what I mean? Or I get disassociated, which, that's a whole other panel that we could be talking about. Yeah. So those types of things, what you're talking about, Gabe, or Jacob, is that, see, I was going through the thing that you two were doing there. But the thing that you were talking about, Jacob, is that, yes, that is a success. It doesn't have to be like something grandiose.
No, and we all measure it differently.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree. I wake up and I feel like if I did anything, then that's successful. Yep. There are days where I do feel like, oh gosh, like I do feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. And then I remember like I have to be, okay with that, and it's okay not to accomplish something that day. But back to what Chrissy was saying, when there were days where it would get rough, and I would forget, like, oh yeah, it can get rough, but it's not. You're not 100% better, and it's not like, oh, one day you wake up and you're cured. No, it can get rough, and I think it's, as an advocate, you have to be honest with your people. I felt like a fraud. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I preaching to these people? And I feel like crap. And it's funny because my husband said to me, think about what you would tell the people, like if they asked you for advice. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, well, you have to do this, and that. And I had to take my own advice.
Absolutely. And those who live with bipolar disorder may be able to really identify with this statement a lot. You have to look at the aggregate, right? I have periods of my life where I am very productive, where I can accomplish a lot, and I tick a lot of those boxes off of my list. And then I have times when I absolutely just can't do it, and I feel like a complete just slug, like I can't get anything done. And during those times, it's so hard, but I have to remind myself, like, what am I accomplishing overall in my life? What is the collective that I'm producing here? We have seasons, and that's okay. And it's okay to allow yourself those times to be dormant and to recharge and to, I dare say, hang out in your cocoon for a while, and you can emerge later on. But it's hard to have that perspective when you're in that place. That's why I got into a habit. My partner Elizabeth taught me to leave myself notes, and I do it in my calendar. I do it in reminders, and I do it in random places, so that I discover them when I need them most, and I discover them when I am in that spot and I'm feeling like a complete POS, that I can find it and I can be like, oh yeah, this is temporary.
Well, speaking about random, I know because my mic wasn't working all the well in the beginning. We have a guy here who doesn't talk a whole lot in the panel, but he is doing a whole lot of work on social media and doing this, making sure that everything's working out for us. He's my partner, and that is Wayne the Hacker. He's my partner with Arisen Strength and everything that I do. So I just want to make sure to acknowledge him. And what we talk about on Arisen Strength, the motivational podcast, is that it's about progress, not perfection. Because I am a perfectionist to my detriment. And, the thing is that if I don't do the things that I say, like Jacob was just talking about, I feel like a slug. I feel like I'm not, it's like I'm not worth the time putting into this, or I'm a fraud, or I'm not able, or I'm not what it is that I say that I am. Some people say, well, if you want to be a motivational speaker, you got to do that. You can't be like this. You can't be like that. And it's only through the work that we've done, and Wayne and I have had discussions forever before we even brought the Arisen Strength out. And that is the fact that, I am a motivational speaker. I do own a radio network, an internet radio network. I am doing this panel here tonight. Does that mean that I don't have challenges? Absolutely not. I had challenges all day today. All day today, I was paralyzed. I was like, anxiety was going through me in a crazy way. But I was able to do that. And everybody on this panel is more capable than what anybody would give them credit to be. And Zee, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to add in quick for the perspective piece. It always depends as well as your background. So my best friend, I love her. She's awesome. But she's kind of an asshole. Like, I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to lie. Like, she's kind of an asshole. She comes from a family that has never struggled, has never dealt with loss, has never dealt with depression, has never dealt with any kind of emotion. So she doesn't deal with those emotions. She's like, okay, well, like, for example, we had a fight, like a very verbal, loud fight, because I find myself successful, but only because I don't judge other people. I'm like, I don't judge other people. I'm a happy person. And then she said I wasn't successful because I didn't have a job and I didn't have a place and I didn't have money. And then I was like, so you think Kanye West is successful? And she was like, yeah, Kanye West is the most successful man in the world. And I was like, like that doesn't make that doesn't make sense to me. Like, do you know him personally? Is he happy? Is he a good person? Does he have a lot to him? And she's like, I don't know, and I don't care, but he has money and he has a hot girlfriend or wife or whatever she is. And I'm like, you know what? Like, that doesn't define success for me.
No, but those are the societal norms that we're up against, and that's what we're competing against. But I think that's what the opportunity that we have here as advocates to show the world that that's not a true definition of success.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, I just find what you deal with in your life is going to kind of define your thoughts of it, your core beliefs. So if we all dealt with mental illness, because we all know what it's like to be sad and what it's like to be angry and what it's like to be completely numb. And that's what fuels us to help other people. But then people who've never had to deal with people like us, it's kind of hard to look at them and be like, hey, I'm successful. I pride myself on not judging people. And when Donald Trump became president, I was like, okay, he's awful. He's an awful person. I hate him, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, and then I found out that I was judging him without knowing him. So I'm like, you know what? I'm judging him, and I'm judging myself for judging him. So then all of this, I learned from that. And I was like, you know what? I don't know Donald Trump. He's making stupid laws. He's LGBTQ. He hates. Okay, I'm transgendered. So I'm like, okay, this is awful. I hate this guy, whatever. But I can't judge him because I don't know him. He's successful. I will give him that. But is he happy, and is he successful in his own way?
Well, that's probably a whole other panel when it comes to talking about Donald Trump or anything for him individually. But I agree with the judgment portion of things, because there is definitely a lot of judgment that goes along with mental health awareness. Folks, we could do this show 24/7 for the entire week and probably the month, especially with this panel. It really was an honor to have everybody here tonight. We didn't do it perfectly. We definitely are going to learn from some of the things that happened this evening, but at the same time, I think that we got the point across. I think that we got the conversation started. And that's really all that we're doing is that we're starting the conversation. And then people are then going to have to take it into their friends. They're going to have to take it to their family members, to their legislature, whatever the case may be, so as to be able to really get things going. Hopefully we'll be able to have more of discussions like this, so as to be able to do this in a non-judgment way, but also in a very upfront way. This is the way that things are. This is mental health, folks. If you're looking at the screen, this is mental health. Right? It's not just a person who is, without a house. It's not just a person who's in a homeless shelter. Are there people who are in the hospital? Are there people in a homeless shelter? Yes, I was one of them. So it's like, been there, done that. All right. And I do what it is that I do now. That's the whole thing. This is mental health that we're talking about here. So I really want to say thank you for everybody for being here. Chrissie, thanks so very much. You are awesome. And what are you holding up there? She's holding up Pure OCD, her book.
Is that a Pure Romance catalog?
No, it's...
Oh, no, OCD. I see.
Pure OCD. You got to get it straight. You're on mute, right?
Shameless promotion.
Yeah.
Jacob, hold up your stuff.
Oh, wait.
We're all doing it.
Yeah, right.
This is our
He's got
t-shirt.
There we go. No stigmas. All right.
All right, we're out. Shameless plug.
Believe me,
This was really a pleasure, guys.
When we do the
great.
video, we'll
Great.
make sure that everybody gets knowledge. Zee, thanks so very much for being on the show, so candid with us. And that's the kind of conversation that we need. A lot of people may say, well, that's her and her perception of things. Yes, it is. But there are other people who also have the same type of perception on a number of different subjects you talked about.
Yep.
Janine, wonderful to have you. You really do a lot. When I saw your TED talk, I knew I wanted you on the panel from the very beginning. So I'm so glad that you were able to join us.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Jacob. It's like, Gabe. I am really honored to have you here on the show. In order for you to take time out of your schedule, I know that it's been really crazy, and for you to be on the panel was awesome for us. You definitely, talking about peer support, you definitely dropped some knowledge on some people. So I really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My friend Jacob, man, you got things going on. I mean, we just did the interview on Arisen Strength, which was a great show. It's shameless plug. Go listen to the interview that we had with Jacob. It was really an awesome show. Talking about the Ally program, of which was launched May 1st.
May 1st, yeah.
And so it's definitely something that you want to take a look at. As Gabe talked about, as Chrissy talked about, I can vouch for it. Wayne, I know, vouches for it. He's been in peer advocacy groups. He's gone to peer advocacy training, and he loves the Ally program. So definitely take a look at it at nostigmas.org. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And all of you. It was really great to get to know you all today.
So this is the beginning of the conversation, folks. It's not the end. And we will definitely be talking to you again. Thanks so very much, everybody. We're going to stop the transmission. Wayne the Hacker, make sure to say hi to him. He has been helping us out a great deal. He's going to continue to do so. It's been wonderful to have you here. Good night, everybody.